So while I'm waiting for people to kind of jump in the chat, I'm going to start the video, I'm going to start the live by talking about a program that I just came across a few weeks ago, and I wanted to share it with you. So well, uh, some of you may have heard me on Sandra Champlain's We Don't Die Radio. And so if you haven't heard We Don't Die Radio, or if you're not familiar with Sandra, I would absolutely encourage you to check her radio show out on YouTube. You can just type in We Don't Die Radio. And Sandra is just a wonderful person. You know, she's bubbly, she's upbeat, she's sincere, and there's I think close to 200 different episodes where she researches and it has researchers and mediums and everything to do with life after death and survival of consciousness after this thing that we call death. And they have some amazing guests. So I was privileged enough to be a guest on We Don't Die Radio a while back, and I was a listener before and continue to be a listener since. And YouTube always kind of propagates things that you may be interested in based off your search history. So on the side column, it made me aware of another, if you want to call it a vlog, a podcast, a radio show via YouTube called Sacred Dance with Trance. And the woman, the host, I guess, if you know, for a lack of better words, name's Kathy Beltran. And again, it's called Sacred Dance with Trance. So she has some really wonderful interviews on there with some phenomenal trance mediums and talking about trance development and some of the things that were explored kind of dipped their foot into the realm of physical mediumship. One of the episodes that I just listened to recently had Chris Rader as a guest, who wrote the book The Medium Within. This is a phenomenal book. If you're serious about development in trance, healing, or just as a spiritualist, especially in regards to physical phenomena, this truly is a great resource. The other thing too with trance is if you are interested in trance mediumship and that sort of seeming like the next step in your mediumship, Tony Stockwell's A Path to Trance Mediumship is a really wonderful tool, because not everyone has access to teachers, and while ideally you would sit in a circle for the development of trance, sometimes spirit has to use what they have, and you have to use what you have. So those are just a couple resources that I wanted to share with you. And again, Sacred Dance with Trance, check it out, Kathy Beltran. You can find her on Facebook, as well as checking out We Don't Die Radio with Sandra Champlain. So I wanted to get that out of the way while we're just sort of waiting for some people to get in the room. I see Pan's in here. Daisy, how was your class? I'm assuming you're referring to the class at the library on the history of spiritualism in Ohio. And that actually went really well. So I just want to thank, you know, all the people who came out. You know, it's sort of a for me, I find it fascinating because I'm a spiritualist and I find history fascinating, but I wasn't sure how it was going to go over just with the public in general, if it would be an area of interest. And it ended up being pretty well attended, and just a really wonderful experience. You know, the people that came out, I think, learned a lot, had some really interesting questions, so it went really well. Thank you for asking. Hey, Heather. Tamarshar, love that you do these. Thank you, I enjoy doing these. I know I haven't been on here super recently, but I just wanted to check in. You know, I'm finished with work for the weekend, so I have the rest of the night and Sunday off before I get back to readings on Monday, and I want to check in with you guys because I like doing that. You know, it seems to keep things flowing. Interesting conversation always comes out of these things. So, hey Craig, that's why I do this. So again, you know, like usual, I'm just gonna leave it up to you. Like, what do you guys want to explore tonight? What do you want to talk about? You know, what do you want to share? What do you want insight into? And we'll just kind of take it as it goes. Halloween energy's getting close. You know, Heather, it's funny that you say that. Halloween is my favorite holiday. I love fall. I love October. there's a certain smell that starts to come in the air, and there's a certain vibe that you start to feel the closer that we get to Halloween. And I think that that's absolutely true, but people always talk about Halloween as being a time where the veil between this world and the next are the thinnest. And I have to say, as a medium and as a spiritualist, I don't necessarily think that's true. At least that hasn't been my experience. The veil between the two worlds is thin, period. It's just a vibrational difference. But I wish I could remember the source, but I was listening to, was it Scott Milligan, or it was an interview with a physical medium, and they said that for them, they feel that if there is such a thing as a thinning of the veil at a particular time of the year, that it's actually Christmas. That even if we take away the Christian element and the dogma and the religious aspect of it, but Christmas is purely a time where we're focused on giving, where we're focused on love, where we're thinking of our loved ones and miss them most. So that lifts our vibration, and it just sort of helps blend the two worlds. So I thought that was really, really interesting. Do you see auras? I do. It's not something that when I'm walking around, I'm just bombarded by seeing everyone's aura. Occasionally it just happens, but for the most part, it's something that if I look for it, I can see it. You can kind of train yourself into auric sight. And it's something that I think everyone can do. Most people can see auras. Seeing auras actually isn't hard. I think the difficulty comes in understanding and interpreting the aura. Hey, Tamara. Hey, Peggy. Is your new book out yet? I heard you were working on one. It's not finished yet. The writing portion is finished. It's the technical side that I'm entering into now. So editing, cover design, that sort of stuff. So my goal is for the first of the year to have it available, and at least based off how everything is right now, I seem to be on schedule, so I'll keep you guys updated with that. Actually, there's a few that are kind of in the hopper at the moment, but that one's the priority. So the one that's coming out now is based in mediumship. One is more of a personal sharing of my experiences. One is, it's going to be sort of a workbook of sorts, and that's all I'm going to say about that. And then there's another one that I have to do some more research, but it's a little fringe. It's a little different than anything that I've ever written before. So that'll come much, much later, but those are the ones that are sort of existing at the moment. Can we talk about dreams and how dreaming may be considered, I don't know if it's just cut off or if it's not showing the rest of the comment, but I'm assuming that the rest of that has to do with like astral travel, astral projection. So I believe that there's an incredibly fine line between lucid dreaming and astral travel, astral experiences. When we have the experience, and I think this is something that we all experience sometimes, when we have the experience of our body's asleep and we know that we're asleep, and we have that moment of consciousness of like, oh, I'm sleeping right now, I'm asleep. That would be considered a lucid dream or a lucid experience. When it goes beyond an awareness of just the fact that you are asleep, an awareness of your unconsciousness, and you start experiencing traveling to different places, or oftentimes flying dreams are classic scenarios of out-of-body travel, out-of-body experiences. Now, usually when people talk about astral travel or out-of-body experiences, the one thing that goes along with this that I hear quite frequently is, I feel like I may be attacked, or I feel like there's a denseness or a heaviness on my chest, or there's a noise that either can sound like wind or a bunch of people talking at once. That's actually very common and very normal and not something to be afraid of. So what happens is, when the conscious mind kind of takes a back seat and we sort of go into autopilot and we can sleep and our body just continues to do what it does, the etheric body, the astral body, is less tethered to its physical encasing. So most of us actually leave our body when we sleep. The majority of us just don't remember it. So we all sort of astral project, or we all sort of astral travel. It's just when we remember or are aware of that we're doing it while we're doing it that we call it an out-of-body experience or an astral experience. So the soul, the mind, the consciousness, the astral body does what it does, goes where it goes. But it's upon returning that usually people start to get things like sleep paralysis. So the astral body, or the etheric form, or that consciousness, whatever you want to call that consciousness, starts to come back into the body, resituate itself in the physical form. And sometimes what happens is the brain kind of wakes up in that process. So it's almost like being half out, half in. Because you're never completely out of your body. A part of your consciousness is always retained within. So you become aware of you trying to come back into you. And sometimes that can be interpreted with feelings of panic. That can be experienced as not being able to move your body because you're caught in an in-between state. And sometimes it can be experienced as a dread and a heaviness on the chest, but it's really just you trying to come back into you. And sometimes those experiences can feel like they're minutes long, when in reality it's a fraction of a second. So sometimes the best thing to do in those experiences is to take a breath and just say, this is me coming back into me, everything will go back to normal in a second, and that usually takes care of it. Witnessing murder confirmed by news headlines, and still having trouble understanding the one situation I talked to about some time ago. So, okay, in that regard, the mind is incredibly powerful, and it's just one aspect of our consciousness. So, if you're having those experiences that you're visiting or seeing places that may not be so great, on some level, even if it's not a conscious thought, a part of you is curious about that or drawn to that. And so you can kind of think of the astral self, because sometimes the astral self is more baser or animalistic or instinctual. So you can think of it like a little kid. So if the little kid was running off and going and playing in a yard where it shouldn't be playing, you would say, okay, you stay in your own yard. And so as you go to sleep at night, I think keeping yourself in a good vibrational state, whether that be prayer, meditation, visualization, is important as you're falling asleep, because that kind of sets the tone. The other thing too is creating a dialogue, a self-talk of saying, okay, we're not going to go here, and also asking assistance from your guides when it doesn't matter if you know who they are or not, vocally, verbally, or even mentally, and just saying, especially your protector, because we all have a guide who sort of oversees our physical protection, of, if I leave my body when I sleep, this is where we don't want to go. Can you please enforce that? And that should make a huge difference. Movies and TV shows impact that a bit, you think? It does. It absolutely does. You know, like I love thrillers. I can appreciate horror when it's done right. But even though I can watch, like American Horror Story, even though I can watch that and it gets really kind of intense and gruesome and stuff like that sometimes, and I know that that's not, that stuff isn't real, or that I'm not really worried about things, murderers or supernatural bad stuff or whatever, things like that do seep into the subconscious. And it can affect us. So I think sometimes just being conscious of what we put in, we're conscious of what we put in our body. I think we need to be conscious of what we put in our minds. In Tokyo for a conference. Sounds very interesting. For those of you who are in here, Todd, we're talking about mediumship, and of course we always talk about spiritualism at some point or another. You guys should check out Todd's book, and if you want to plug it or post a link in the comments, or an Amazon page or whatever, I think you guys should check that out. I've also had this idea lately for something that I want to try. Hey, Stephen. For something that I want to try, I'm not quite sure how it will look, because despite the fact that I am my age, I'm not the most technologically inclined individual. So I just have to do some research on how to go about it. But my gayness is going to come out here in a second when I tell you that I absolutely am in love with The View and have watched The View since I was a little kid. So, all the way back to the days of Meredith and Barbara and Star Jones, all the way up through now. I freaking love The View. And the one of the things that I love the most about The View is the hot topic section in the beginning. I just love the discussion. So I would like to, at some point, pull together like a psychic view of either having, and probably a lot of this will have to be sort of like split screen Skype, getting people in, spiritualist mediums and clairvoyants, and just having discussion about themselves and what they do, and different philosophies based off this sort of thing. But I also think that it would be interesting if you could get multiple people together on a consistent basis to have some sort of a round table of even just talking about things of a worldly basis, pop culture, politics, and everything. But where it has a little bit of a unique perspective on it, because we all come from a background of being a medium or a spiritualist or a clairvoyant. So we're touching on that spiritual side of things, but we're also getting the humanness to show that we are human, and we do care about sometimes these everyday worldly things that we don't always get to talk about, because of course if it's our business or our livelihood, that's what we're discussing when we're doing videos or feeds or posting on our Facebook pages, things of that nature. So I'm going to see what that could look like and explore with that and see where that takes me. Yeah, so if you guys didn't see it, Todd's book is Talking to the Other Side by Todd J. Leonard. It is on Amazon. The Housewives of Spiritualism. That, I've actually thought about that too, like a parody, putting together some sort of a parody, just for fun, just to do something for fun. That would be amazing. The Real Housewives together. I have to say, I watch Atlanta and Beverly Hills. I cannot seem to get into like New York or New Jersey, but I love Atlanta and I love Beverly Hills. I love Nene, but those girls are too much. Yes. Actually, a friend of mine, Thomas John, was on, I believe it was the New York one. Stop commenting on my nonsense. I believe it was the New York one. I don't watch it, so I'm not sure who the people are, but he did a reading on that show. And I think there have been psychics on other ones. Like I know in Atlanta, Kim Zolciak used to go to the palmist, like the little old lady out of her house. It was a little bit ago that my little battery alerted me that it was running low, so if I disappear, that's what happened, because I don't know how long it's gonna last. I love the photo of the Bang sisters behind you. This is my... I took some of them down because my wall started to get cluttered. This is my wall of spiritualism. So we got, Alec Harris and Leslie Flint and Mickey and the Bang sisters and Andrew Jackson Davis. And then over here we've got Charles Swan and Clifford Bias and Ethel Post Parrish, Edgar Casey, Hudson Tuttle, Mabel Riffle, the Fox sisters, and Gordon Higginson. Some of the others I took down, but there used to be more. And then up here, Todd this won't mean much to anybody else, but up here above my Blackhawk altar is a picture of Bill English that Reverend Terry gave me when he was moving out of, when he was changing houses at camp. So he had a copy and he gave that to me, and whenever we sit for phenomena, we always ask Bill to help us. Thanks, Bianco. It's not as organized as it usually is at the moment because I've been in this mode this whole year actually, but I've been in this really intense mode of like simplify, 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 because I could be somewhat of a metaphysical hoarder, and so I've been going through books and all sorts of stuff and trying to get rid of things that I don't resonate with, I don't need, giving things away, so things are a little mismatched, but I'll show you the rest of the room. So you saw the wall behind me. That's the spirit cabinet. That lectern over there was given to me by my grandfather, so there's some saints that sit up there. And then above, a photo of the Mother Mary that I took, and kind of flanking that on the left and right, Saint Germain and Master Hilarion from the Seven Rays, Seven Masters. Whoops, I apologize. I borrowed a lamp for better light. Up here I have some spirit art that was done for me. And then, actually that right here, these here are some of my ancestors, my great-great-great-grandparents and his Cherokee wife. And then there's some of the stuff we use with seance over here, and then just more bookshelves, teaching manuals, stuff like that. Psychic cribs. I usually will do videos in here or outside, but I'm too much of a hermit, like I'm too private to do a psychic crib show. People are nosy enough as it is, I don't want them in my house. A little OCD? I'm a lot OCD. I like triple check the stove before I go to sleep, or I have to like check myself, because if I don't, I can feel when it starts to get a little extreme or a little excessive, and then I just have to like get myself together and sort of force myself to sit in the uncomfortability. Otherwise I could get like really kooky with little rituals and habits and stuff like that. I saw a segment on Chelsea Handler, and the actress being interviewed said she's trying to put together a film or series on Victoria Woodall. I can't wait for that. You know, it's funny that you say that, Todd, because a couple nights ago I was doing my presentation on the history of spiritualism in Ohio, and so we just very briefly touched on her because of some of her Ohio roots, and I was emailed by a woman who said something along the lines of doing a documentary about her. And so it's funny that, given the state of the world and what's going on, that people's interest, or that people think that there's an interest for a figure like her. I think it's wonderful. Oh. So this is a good question for an ending point. Both Nancy and Brandy bring up, on a spiritualist level, or from a spiritual perspective, how do you feel about the mass shooting that we just had in Las Vegas? Just not even as a spiritualist, just as a human, it's a sickening experience, and I think it was a needless experience. I don't, people are always looking to understand a deeper spiritual reason, and I do believe that there are spiritual agreements and contracts and pre-birth arrangements and karmic things that draw people to places at certain times. But I think that it would be incredibly callous to brush off that massacre as, well, it's okay because there's this underlying spiritual reason. And I'm sure that there is a reason for everything, I truly believe, but sometimes bad people just do horrible things. And in a way, despite, there's all sorts of discussions that can come from that, with gun laws and mental health and just there's so much that can be done that to me is just common sense. Plainly, it's just plainly common sense. And honestly, I don't think much is going to change. I truly don't. And I think there will be more of these. And I'm not saying this as like a Sylvia Browne, Gene Dixon prediction. Do I think there's going to be more of these? Yes, simply for the fact that not much is changing, is probably going to change as far as laws and restrictions and stuff like that. I was going somewhere with this. But I think on a spiritual level, everyone has an element of responsibility with this. Because and it's not like a blame thing, but we all have aspects of us that are unhealed, and that's okay because that's part of the human condition. We come here to experience and learn and grow and heal and then find more things and more layers to unfold. But we all have unpeaceful parts of ourselves. We all carry around fear inside us, and we all carry around anger inside us, and we all carry around certain prejudices inside us, no matter how free or spiritual or liberal we may be. And so I think the best thing that we can do, besides those common sense things like laws and things of that nature, reform, different elements of reform, are to address those parts of ourself. All those emotions that were evoked in you when you saw something that horrible are things that we carry inside us, pieces that we carry inside us, that every single one of us, myself included, can work on bettering and healing and facing and confronting, because it isn't always about, healing isn't this thing where we just experience relief. Healing involves pain. Healing involves facing the dark aspects of ourself. And it's not that we get rid of those dark aspects of ourselves. We disempower them by learning from them and welcoming them to the table and saying, okay, why are you here? What are you here to teach me? So in that broad sense, I think we all carry an element of responsibility. In the more of the micro sense, it really just boils down to, here's a pattern, here's a problem, and unless there's a break in that pattern, that problem's going to continue. But I appreciate all of you who jumped in here, not to end on a heavy note, but that, that's something that I think a lot of people have had on their mind. So I do think that despite the fact that it's a little bit heavier than things we're talking about, it is a good ending place. So I'm going to go get some food in my stomach and charge my phone. But again, I appreciate all of you. I hope you guys have a great weekend, and I'll be updating you guys soon.